Hello again. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy over here for Everyman IT, and today's class is Practical Risk Assessment and Mitigation. So we just had the class Introduction to Risk Assessment, and in that class we went over the basic concepts that you have to understand in order to do a risk assessment. What is risk? What is a threat? What is a vulnerability? So remember, risk is the likelihood of loss or the likelihood of financial loss for a business. Remember, whenever you're doing risk assessments, you really have to be thinking about what is the actual impact on the business. You can't go to a business person and say they need antivirus or they need firewalls or they need backup systems, etc., just because they should have it. They're not going to say yes to you should just have this. They will say yes if they understand what the financial ramifications are if they don't have one of these systems. So if you do not have a backup system and your server crashes, then you're totally out of business. So you risk losing your entire business. That would be a very expensive loss, and so the business person would be willing to spend at least a little bit of money to try to prevent that from happening. So you have to remember that risk is a business concept, the likelihood of loss. Threat, of course, as we talked about in the class, threat is not simply hackers. Everybody always, whenever they think about computer security and all that, they think about hackers, 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 hackers. Hackers is one thing, and it's actually a pretty small thing when you get down to it. You have to worry about natural disasters. You have to worry about humans doing stupid stuff. You have to worry about system failures, and you have to worry about things like hackers. So threats are not simply, hackers and little snot-nosed 13-year-olds out on the internet trying to hack your systems. What is the chance that a flood is going to come through and wipe out all of your systems? That's something that you have to worry about. And then finally, vulnerability. Vulnerability is how vulnerable are your systems to these types of attacks. So if you have a server sitting up out on the internet and it has no firewall on it whatsoever, then it is very vulnerable for attack. We talked about the basic equation for figuring out risk is risk equals threat times vulnerability. So we went over that in the class. The main thing, as I talked about before, and we'll talk about more in this class, is don't try to plug in actual numbers to this. Don't try to make vulnerability 10 and threat 50, which means risk equals 500. That doesn't really matter. It's more of a logical concept. You're trying to, the more vulnerability, if there's a lot of threat of something happening and there's a lot of vulnerability, then it means your risk is high, type of thing. You should be thinking about this more just as a logical concept. Now, as we go into the idea of the practical risk assessment and mitigation, one of the first things that I really want to hammer into is that security, computer risk management, all of that stuff is really simply you as a technologist doing your job properly. So a lot of people, especially when they're new, and they're in their early 20s, and they're like, I want to be a computer security specialist. Well, really, if you don't understand systems, it's very difficult to be a computer security specialist, because basically all you're doing with computer security, with a risk assessment and all of that, is making sure that the systems work properly. So really with this, don't think about the risk assessment and computer security as some special field that's very specialized. Only computer security people do computer security. No. Good computer security should be done by everybody. If you are a professional, if you have been a technologist for 5 or more years, you should do computer security. This is just part of your job. So when you go to set up a server, part of your job should just be making sure that it's set up securely, that it just can't be hacked at a moment's notice. As I said before, when we're doing the risk assessment, we're going to be talking about in a minute how we go through this process. Again, remember, risk and mitigation is a business decision. So when you go in to do your risk assessment, you really have to think about how the company or the organization makes money. You have to think about how the employees affect the profitability of the business. The more you think about these financial ramifications, the easier it will be to sell sell security to the boss or to the owner. And security is probably one of the biggest sales games that you have to do for bosses or owners, because if you put in a new computer, bosses and owners really understand new computers. I spent $1,000 or $2,000 and we have this box, and my employee can sit at this box and they can do work. That's something that people can understand. If you put up a website, they go, I spent $10,000 and I have a website. That's something that they can see. It's something, it's there. It's like a brick. I paid $1 for a brick. I got a brick. Computer security and dealing with risk management, again, it's real. It can really affect the bottom line, but a lot of times the outcomes or the work that you do cannot be seen physically. You can see if you buy a new router. So, if the boss buys a new router, he goes, I spent $1,000 for this router. What they don't see is the time and energy it takes to go into that router and to configure it properly. So a lot of times when you come in to new organizations, if you have a new client or if you've just been hired, they may have all this equipment. So they've already purchased the equipment. You go in and you find out that the equipment is not configured properly. So you're going to have to sell them on the idea of configuring that equipment properly, because that might be 5, 10, 20 billable hours very easily, which could go into the thousands of dollars, and they're not going to get a physical thing at the end of it. It's just security. You are more secure. It's just, what if somebody came to your door and said that if you gave them $5,000, you would be more secure? It's a hard sell. So that's one of the things I want you to think about, is that risk management and, computer security, this is a business decision, and it is going to be something that you are going to have to sell to the business owner. And then finally, that risk assessment, mitigation, this whole process is an ongoing process for an organization. Again, a lot of people, think about, when you think about computer security or risk management and all that, they think about it as a one-time event. I am going to go to this client and we are going to make them secure, and then I'm going to walk away. Or they think, you get hired, so you go in and you fix up and you make everything secure in your network, and then you never do anything with it again. So, the antivirus is 3 years old, the firewalls are 5 years old, etc. Just remember, with risk assessment, risk management, computer security, this is an ongoing process. You should always be looking. What are the new threats? What are the new vulnerabilities? This is something that you need to go on. So with that, give me a second to put a couple of things together, and then we'll get into practical risk assessment and mitigation. So as we go into the risk assessment process, I need to talk to you about what we are looking for, what we are trying to figure out in this assessment process. The first thing that we need to figure out in this assessment process is what are the assets or the valuable assets for the business. So this could mean computers. This could mean contact information. This could mean trade secrets. This could mean a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll talk about it as we go. But the first thing that you have to figure out is what is valuable to this business. And the big thing that I'm going to tell you, being a professional, is it is surprising that, when you go in as a technologist, what you think is valuable many times is not what is valuable to these business people. So you go in and you may see some $5,000 server, you may see some $10,000 telephone system, and you're thinking, wow, the server and all this is very important. This is what matters. At the end of the day, all that may matter for that business owner is the QuickBooks file. Basically, the QuickBooks file may have all of their contact information, and if that gets lost, the entire business goes bye-bye. All the server and the computers and all of the fancy stuff may actually not be that valuable to them. So what you're going to have to figure out first is what are the assets? What is valuable to them? Then you're going to have to look at, what are the threats to this business? Is this a completely online business. So there's no real physical security concern because it's all online, but you do have to worry about hackers. You do have to worry about impersonators and fraud. Or is this a business where they really don't do anything online? You know, maybe they have a dial-up connection to the internet still. So you don't really have to worry about hackers because hackers don't hack dial-up connections. But they are in Tornado Alley. So you know, maybe there's massive weather patterns there. You know, every once in a while, entire office buildings get picked up and, you know, chucked a couple miles. This is something that you might have to worry about. Or maybe, you know, here in Baltimore, like I say, I dealt with this a lot. The business, you know, didn't have a lot of money when they were buying their building, so they bought their building in the middle of the ghetto, and I do mean the ghetto. And so again, you know, they're not worried so much about hackers. Here in Baltimore, we don't really have weather events, but they are worried about people literally coming in and ransacking the building, you know, stealing computers willy-nilly. This is a problem. So depending upon the business and how things operate, you're going to have to figure out, you know, what the threats are to the business. Is it from the internet? Again, it may not be. The threat to the business, you know, may not be hackers. It may be, you know, this may be a new client, as I've seen. The boss is some hyper type A personality, which is can be a complete bastard to work for. So although they're a good business person, they piss off all their employees, so you may have to worry about internal employee vandalism. You know, these are the things that you're going to have to figure out. And then, what are the vulnerabilities? You know, what are the vulnerabilities to this business's or to your business's infrastructure? I've seen where cabling is just a mess, a pile of just stuff with a switch kind of in the middle, where literally I just picked up one cable to try to figure out what was going on with this business network, and it shut the entire network down. So is the cabling vulnerable? Is the infrastructure vulnerable? Do they have firewalls up? Do they have antivirus software on their systems? You know, have the systems been updated? All these questions are what you're going to have to look at. So not just the threats, but what are the vulnerabilities? Because remember, in that whole equation, risk equals threat times vulnerability. If anything equals 0 or close to 0, then risk is 0. So again, if you're in the ghetto, but the person was smart and they have their server room in a cinder block room with steel reinforced doors, you know, although there's a possibility that somebody would try to come in and steal their servers. The reality is that at least the crackheads around here aren't going to spend that much time doing it. So these are the things that you're going to have to look for. So what are the assets? What does the business consider valuable? And I'm serious about this, especially for you new guys. Don't assume what you think the assets of the business are. Believe me, these businesses that you're going to go and see and that you're going to go and deal with, they're going to be, I mean, they're going to do everything in the world. You know, we had businesses that were fitness clubs, that were swim clubs, that were import-exporters, that were construction companies, scientific companies, medical offices, dental offices, etc. All of these different companies and all the owners of the different companies had different assets that they were worried about. So find out what those assets are. If you go in and you're so focused on what you're worried about, you will end up doing a risk assessment and do all the mitigation for things that they are not worried about. And that, as I always tell you, is always going to get to be a mess. So what are the assets? What are the threats? What are the vulnerabilities? And then at the end, when we come back with the action plan for the business owner, we are going to have to determine the business justifications for what our plan entails. You know, we think that you should, you know, put antivirus software onto all of your computers because you are experiencing downtime because of viruses and malware. That downtime costs you approximately X. Installing antivirus software on all the computers will cost you Y. It's worth it for you to do this. So remember, this is all a business exercise. So when you go back, you are going to have business justifications for why you're suggesting the security and risk management procedures that you're suggesting. And the more actual dollar signs that you can put around things, the better it's going to work with everybody. So with that, let's go and we're going to talk about the interview process and how we start off the risk assessment procedure. So now I'm going to talk you through how I personally do risk assessments. So what my risk assessment procedure is when I go into new companies. As you get more experience, you can create your own risk assessment procedures, but these are the risk assessment procedures that I have found worked best, and these are the steps that I go in to make it work best. So we're going to go through the interview process, then we're going to look at the overall infrastructure. Then after that, we're going to go talk to the employees. There's a reason why I do things in these particular steps. I'll try to explain this as we go along, but there is an actual method to this madness where you don't look at the infrastructure and then interview the boss and then interview the employees. If you do it in the proper steps, it will work out best for you. So when you get hired by your client, or when your boss decides that you need to work on computer security risk assessment for your business, the first thing that you should do is have a sit-down interview with the boss or with the client. So this is the owner. This is not the employees. This is not the spouse. This is not the assistant. This isn't the guy who kind of knows how the computers work and fixes a modem card every now and then. This is the boss of the company, the CEO, the executive, etc. This is somebody, again, who is going to understand the business of the business. Remember, the business is what's always most important. So the initial interview has to be with somebody who understands the business. And again, preferably it is the boss or the CEO, one of the executives. The first thing that you're going to ask them as you sit down is, what do they do? What is their business? Do they sell a product? Do they sell a service? Are they construction? Do they do pools, etc.? You want to be thinking about what the business does, how it does it, why it does it, and how it makes a profit. This is not just important for if you're going to a new client. So this is not just for consultants going to new clients. As you know, if you hear me rant and rave about employees a lot of times, one of the problems with employees and with you, if you have a boss, is you may not understand how your business works. So you get a paycheck every week. You sell, those salespeople over there sell widgets. The warehouse people box widgets. So widgets, you're in the widget business. Well, how your business actually makes money, how it actually makes a profit, so that you can get a paycheck, may be significantly different than what you think it is. Like I say, a lot of employees, and like I say, this is no offense, so don't take any offense to it. A lot of employees, I would say 90% of employees, don't really understand what their business does or why it does it. So again, even if this is your boss, even if you're a normal employee, still sit down with the boss and try to understand how the business works, and how the company makes money. This will be very important. Then the next question is, how dependent on computers are they? How dependent does the CEO or the executive feel? This will give you an idea of how, what kind of risk there is to these people's systems. So with a lot of companies now, that what you'll find, even very profitable companies, multi-million-dollar companies, they may have a lot of computers around, but the computers don't actually affect their core business. Somebody could come in and steal every single computer they have, and it would be a hiccup. It would be a pain in the butt. The boss couldn't watch YouTube on his lunch break. Sometimes that really is the case. So you walk in and you see all these computers and you see these servers. Just thousands and tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. But for the core business, it doesn't really matter. So this is something you're going to figure out. Are the electronic systems, are the computer systems actually valuable to the core business? The next thing you're going to have to ask is, how comfortable is the executive with technology, and how comfortable does the executive feel that the entire business is with technology? So remember, you're going to implement solutions for your clients. You're going to go through risk assessment. You're going to put in antivirus. You're going to put in firewalls. Whatever. But if the company that you're dealing with is technologically illiterate, remember that security actually takes, work. It takes the ability to deal with some of these security systems. So if you go into an entirely technologically illiterate company, you install all these sophisticated computer systems, you may find out that you're doing more damage to the company than good because your systems are so protective that they can't get their job done. So you're going to have to ask, how technologically literate is the company? And I have to ask, how many employees does the company have? Is it 50 employees? Is it 100 employees? Is it 5? To get an idea of, how many people are running around this business. And then how many employees have computers. So again, depending on the business that you're dealing with, you may have 100 employees, but only 10 of the employees have computers. This is something just to kind of have in your head. So how many employees are you dealing with? How many computers do you have? Etc. This is, remember, when you're doing a risk assessment, when you're looking for risk, when you're looking for threats, this isn't really always scientific. This is as much an art form as it is a science. So it's thinking about the psychology of the business that you're dealing with. It's looking for threats where people may not have realized there were threats in the past. So getting this basic kind of information will give you an understanding of how this business operates, what's going on, so that you can choose the right solutions for them. Once you get done, figuring out, what is the business, how many employees they have, etc., the next thing to ask is, what are your current problems? So whether you're an employee, whether you're a client, you walk in and you say, okay, so I understand you're a business now. What are your current problems? So when I say problems, I mean current things that are impacting the performance of the business. And what they'll say is, our computers keep crashing every other day. That is costing us money. Okay, that's a problem. Legally, it may be, we talked about, all of these privacy laws. It may be that he says to you, I was talking with my lawyer. We collect all this information about our clients. I was told I am liable for that information if it gets hacked. So my problem is, I know I need to secure this information. I know it for a fact. And then you go, okay, then you know what you're working with. So this, when you ask for problems, it may be one thing, it may be two things, it may be 20 things. But problems, when you're asking for problems, you're asking for what is currently happening, what is currently affecting the systems. That's the first thing that you're going to ask. The next thing you're going to ask is, what are your concerns? So we talked about your systems are crashing. We talked about, for a fact that you have to protect this data. Then you say, what are your concerns? What would you like to do in the future? This is where the person may say, well, the computers are working okay, but it feels like they are working slowly. Or this may be on the legal standpoint. I haven't talked to the lawyer, but we do keep a lot of our clients' data, and I'm concerned about what would happen if we get hacked. So a problem would be if a lawyer had specifically said they need to protect their data. This is more just one of those concerns. We've been collecting data for 20 years. I haven't really worried about it before, but I don't know, maybe we should protect our data more. So the next thing you do after the problems is, what are the concerns? The next thing that you have to talk about, again, talking about the legal, is what are the client's legal requirements for data? Do they have legal requirements for storing data? Is this, a dentist, or is this a doctor's office that has HIPAA regulations? This will affect how you do a risk assessment, because if there are regulations, if there are legal laws that this company has to follow, then you have to make sure that you follow those laws. The next thing is, how are the systems that they are using, that they have, how are they being used? Like I say, when you walk in, because you're trying to figure out assets, what's actually important, what's not important. A lot of times you'll walk in and you'll see that $5,000 server there, and you'll go, wow, these guys have a really good network going on. And then you talk with the boss and you find out that the server got plugged in 3 years ago. but they don't actually use it for anything. So what you have to ask is what is it, what systems are they using that they think are valuable? Do they use Salesforce? Do they use Exchange? What is it? What systems are actually making their business, do something? The next thing is, we're going to get into this with physical security and such. Do they own the building that they are in? And or can they make structural changes to the building? This is very important, especially when we get into networking and that kind of stuff, is because what happens if you need to run cable? What happens if you need to build a server room? So like I say, for physical security, they should always have a server room that locks. Can they build a little 5x5 server room? Is that a possibility? Whether or not they can make modifications to the structure of the building can be a very important thing, and so you need to understand it. The next thing is, what are the maintenance or support contracts with other IT organizations? This bit me in the butt quite a few times as a consultant, where you go in to do your job, but you have to work around other people's systems, and those systems are dealt with support people out of New Delhi or something. So are there systems that are supported by other companies? This will affect what plan you come up with for risk management in the future. So is that. Then, is there operational security now in the building? If I walk in off the street, would somebody just let me go see the server room? What is the operational security? What is the physical security? The next thing is, and this is very important, we talk about threats. What are the known threats to the business? Again, as we talked about before, where you may not realize what the business does or how the business actually makes money, you may also not realize what the actual threats are to the business. You come into the job day in, day out, you don't realize that every month or so that the building gets broken into and a computer gets stolen. That's in somebody else's section. So talk to them. And what are the threats? Is this in a floodplain? I talked about that in the introduction to risk assessment. I never knew the business was in a floodplain. We did all this work to set up, the server and everything on the first floor of a business in a floodplain. That was a bad idea. But those are the kind of questions that you're going to need to ask. What are the threats that you're worried about? Employees, again, even if you're an employee in a company, you may not look around and you may not see a lot of the other employees or realize their mental status. And the boss may say, I'm worried. We've got 3 or 4 employees that we're probably going to have to either fire, or maybe they get deducted money or something, and I'm worried that they're going to try to damage our systems out of retribution. These are the things that the boss will be able to tell you. The final 2 things that you're going to have to ask, and you're going to have to ask them to be completely honest with you, is what is their risk tolerance? Again, remember, this is a business risk is a business decision, the likelihood of loss. So the business owner has to decide what his or her risk tolerance is. How comfortable do they feel if a server crashes? Some of the clients that I had, if the server crashed, we'll get another one next month. Seriously, some of them were that way. If the server crashed, we never needed a server anyway. So their risk tolerance was high. They really didn't care. Whereas we had others that if the system went down, they wanted to back up within like 30 minutes, or they had no ability to have downtime. The server always had to be up. We had one of our clients that way before virtualization was big, literally bought identical hardware for the server. So if their one server failed, we could literally pull the hard drive out of that one server and plug it into the other server, so the hardware was working. They had very little risk tolerance. So you're going to have to ask them, and you're going to have to get out the honesty of what is their risk tolerance. If the server dies, how long till they needed to get back up? And remember, like I say, this is a business decision. This is not your decision as a technologist. This is a business decision. They may say, we never needed the server, or they may need the system up all the time. And then finally, and this is one of the biggest things for what plan you come up with at the end of the day is what is their IT budget? What can they expect to spend? Is it $1,000? Is it $5,000? Is it $15,000? Give you a ballpark figure on what they're willing to spend, because if you go through this whole process, you don't want to suggest $100,000 worth of work for a company that can only afford $5,000. That just wastes everybody's time. So what are they willing to spend for their IT budget? These are the things you have to think about. Again, find out what the business is, how it's profitable, how everything works. This is very important. Remember, we are the support for the business. Too many of us, we think we're the center of the universe, and we really aren't. We are simply the support for the business. What are the problems that they are currently having? What right now, right this instant, what are you worried about? Then their concerns overall. I'm concerned. I think things could work better. I think we could do things better. What are the legal requirements? What systems are they currently using? And remember, this is an important one, because you could walk in, you could see very expensive systems that are basically just sitting there wasting electricity. I've seen that happen a lot. Again, can they make changes to the building? This is huge for things like running cable and such. Do they have maintenance contracts with other companies? This is important because when you decide the plan for the security model, you may have to do multiple layered networks. Let's say there's they're using some network computer and server that you're not allowed to touch, you're not allowed to do any of the security for. You may have to wall that off into its own little world to protect the other systems that are on the network. These are things you have to think about. Operational physical security, what? Do they lock things up at the end of the night? Known threats, again, this is a big one, because believe me, you may not know what the threats are to the business. You just may never think of some of the stuff. Again, I keep saying floodplain. Who the hell would have thought? Then what is their risk tolerance? Again, this is a business decision. Let them decide what their risk tolerance is, and then what is their budget? Are they willing to spend $200 on this? Are they willing to spend $100,000 on this? It doesn't have to be specific. We're not saying $1,500.01. We're saying a couple $1,000. No, $10,000, $15,000. No, $50,000. You know what? Just roundabout numbers. That is the interview process, and like I say, this is the first process, the first thing that you need to do to get an overview of the business, and you need to talk to the executive. You need to talk to the CEO or the business owner. Do not do this interview with the office computer guy. This is not a technological question yet. This isn't technology yet. This is business right now. So don't get put off to the assistant or the computer guy. You are talking to the boss, you're talking to the CEO, or you are talking to a high-level executive to do this interview. So the next thing that you're going to do after you do the interview with, like I say, the executive, the business person, is then I want you to go through the building, through the office, and observe the physical infrastructure of the building. So look at the cabling. Just look at the servers. Just look at the computers. Look at the patch panels and all that. I just want you to walk through and start to get an idea of the physical layout of the infrastructure and the physical quality of the infrastructure. So when you walk through the building, are cables just hanging willy-nilly, coming out of the drop ceiling? Or does everybody plug directly into a nice little panel on the wall? The computers, when you look at the computer, just look at the computers. Are they dusty? Are they gunky? Are they dirty? Or is everything, relatively clean? Is it all spotless? When we talk about for the risk assessment, system failure. If you go through and everything just has crud on it, it probably means the systems all need to be cleaned out so that the CPU fan or the power fan doesn't fail. So I want you to walk through the building and just, like I say, look at these things. Just get a feel for the physical items of their systems. So you know, what do the servers look like? Are the servers new? Are the servers old? You know, if you've been doing this for any length of time, you walk into a server room and you can pick out, you know, what servers were purchased within the last 3 years and what servers were purchased, you know, 10 years ago. Look for these things to start to get an idea of what you're dealing with. Again, you're going to be looking for things like the physical appearance of the equipment, the quality of the equipment. Do they have Cisco equipment, or do they have, you know, 10-year-old Linksys stuff? Another thing you're going to be looking for is look for pointless equipment. Are there lots of workstations that are turned on that nobody is doing anything with? Or again, one of the things I had with a lot of clients is you'd walk into their server rooms and you know, they'd have their main server, and they might have another server, and they have their router and all that. But then there'd be 3 or 4 or 5 other computers that were turned on in the server room, buzzing along, doing something. So look for these systems, and then try to figure out what it is these systems are doing, especially when you're thinking about hacking, you're thinking about vulnerability. Well, you know, forgotten systems are a great point of entry for hacking, or a great point of entry for viruses. Because if they got forgotten about a long time ago and they don't have automatic updates on, you know, just through the internet, you can get viruses and stuff in them, and they become a little host for a whole little virus hive sitting in there. So look for these things. So you're going to be looking for like quality of equipment, age of equipment, cabling. Again, cabling is a very important thing for downtime. Again, you know, it's not all hacking, it's things like downtime. You know, if the little plugs get moved around too much, you know, that can cause damage. If everything is just a complete mess, like I say, I went into businesses that way, again, profitable multi-million-dollar businesses, and like where their server room is, or where their server, it was just this cabling just came into like this mess, and in the middle of this mess there was a switch that was just kind of plugged and hanging there. So obviously things like that are a problem. So you need to make sure you look at that. And then finally, while you're walking through, what is the physical security for the building? You know, what does the door look like? You know, could somebody just break in and have their way with the entire office stuff, or is it a steel door? Is it something that's very secure? The server equipment, you know, all the telephone system, the server, does it have its own server room? Or, unfortunately, does it have its own room that also acts as the janitor closet? You see this a lot. So get an idea of these type of things to understand, you know, what the threats to the system are. If you have a nice little tight, secure server room that's locked all the time, then you don't have to worry about people generally stealing the servers. If, again, you know, the threat, if the server is in a room that also is the janitor closet, one of the threats may be, you know, just somebody walking in to go get the Windex or whatever, and they accidentally, you know, hit buttons on one of your servers. That could be a problem. So after you do the interview process, I want you to go through and I want you to observe the infrastructure and see what threats or what vulnerabilities there are, and to try to see what potential threats there are. So now, after you've done the interview with the boss, the CEO, after you've walked through and got an idea, you know, the physical layout of all these systems, you know, the physical security and all that, now is where I want you to go, and I want you to talk to the employees. You don't have to talk, I mean, if it's a large company, you don't have to talk to, you know, all 100 employees, but go and start talking to the employees. Generally, secretaries are wonderful sources for information. You know, I don't know if they're called secretaries anymore, you know, admin assistants, whatever they're called. They are generally really good sources of information. Because like I say, as I said before, you know, a lot of times the employees don't understand how the business functions. A lot of times the bosses are so high up, they don't really understand what's going on with the employees. So now that you have an idea of what's going on, you go and you talk to the employees to get their feedback on what's going on. So you talk to them. What problems are they currently having? They may be having problems that for some reason never get filtered up to the boss, or the boss was never thinking about. So they are not able to do their job properly because, something, but it just has never gotten fixed. I mean, you don't know how many businesses I've been in that way, where the employee has been bitching and whining for years, but, for whatever reason, it was never fixed. Their computer still has a virus, 4 years later. The next thing is, what are their concerns? Again, like I say, with bosses and executives, they get wrapped up in their own little world, and so sometimes they don't listen to their employees. And again, like I say, I'm not dissing employees when I talk about employees. Employees are, many times, professional employees. They are experts in their field. So they may be seeing a problem. They may be seeing a problem that could cost the company a lot of money. They could be seeing a high risk, but the boss, for whatever reason, has filtered them out, is not actually listening to them. So when you're talking with them, they may tell you, hey, I've been trying to tell the boss for 5 years now, we keep all our credit card information on the server. I know the server isn't secure, we're going to get our butt suit off at some point. So talking to the employees is a very important part of the process. One of the things that you have to be careful about with talking to the employees is you have to stay the neutral observer in this process. Because a lot of times also employees will try to take advantage of you. It's not that their computer isn't working fast enough for how they would like. It is working fast enough for them to do their job. So be careful when you're talking with the employees and really make sure that what they're talking about are problems that are relevant to the business and not simply problems that they're just kind of, complaining about. Again, one of the good parts with this process is by you talking to the employees, as long as you have a good relationship with that executive, with that owner, when you go back to talk to the executive or the owner, they are going to take you seriously. So although they may have been ignoring their employees for the past 5 years, when you come back and raise the exact same issues that their employees raised, there's a better chance that that boss is going to listen to you versus just ignore you. So after you've done the interview process for the CEO, after you've looked at the infrastructure, then you talk to the employees, what are their problems? What are their concerns? Is there something that would make your life better? That's in the business interest. The main thing, though, is still, remember, this is still business interest. The next thing that you have to look at is you have to do documentation analysis. So you have to go and you have to see what documentation they have for their systems. Do they have written down, who the points of contact are for whatever it is they use? So whoever their internet service provider is. Do they have written down somewhere, Comcast, this is our account number, this is our support number, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Remember, when you're dealing with businesses, simple things like internet connections can be a lot more complicated than you realize. Because, on the East Coast here, everybody either has Comcast or Verizon for internet. There's only 2 options for small businesses and for residential clients. Well, once you get into larger businesses, there's 100 different vendors of internet services. So you can't assume that all you're going to have to do, if they're having an internet problem, is call Comcast. You may have to call some company that's, half a world away, and they have to call somebody, or you may have to have an account number just to talk to somebody. So for all the services that are vital, all the systems and services that are vital, you have to make sure that they have documentation for it. So again, if they have some kind of support contract, some kind of maintenance contract with an outside company, do you have the point of contact? If you need to talk to somebody, can you talk to them? What are the hours of operation? The next thing is, do they have their passwords written down? What is the security policies for the computers? Did somebody come in, if this is a Windows domain, did somebody come in and create group policies and security policies and all that, a couple of years ago? And if they did, is that written down anywhere? Is there documentation so you know what you're getting into? The biggest problem that you're going to have once you start going in to try to clean up systems or make systems more secure is if you don't understand the state the systems are currently in, you could make changes that break something else, and then it all kind of goes and you know, the whole rabbit hole of hell thing. So what is their documentation? Along those lines, do they have their software? This is a huge issue. Do they have the OS CDs for their server operating systems? Do they have the CDs for whatever database software do they use? Do they have the CDs for things like Office, you know, Outlook, etc.? Do they have them? Are they easily accessible, etc.? So, you know, after you talk with the employees, you have to do this documentation analysis. And it's very important because if they don't have very much documentation, then in the next part where you do systems analysis, you're going to actually have to do a lot of documentation to make up for their lack. Documentation is a huge thing. Like I say, is simply having the phone number for the point of contact for the ISP. I mean, I've sat around twiddling my thumbs for 1 or 2 billable hours, just sitting there, waiting for the assistant or whatever to try to find this information. This is very, very important. Do they have the proper documentation? And if not, when you do your risk management plan, part of that process, it will be creating documentation for them. So, after you do the interview with the executive, after you observe the infrastructure, after you talk with the employees, after you do the documentation analysis, then finally you get to probably something along the lines of what you were thinking about with computer security, is you actually sit down at the systems and you do a systems analysis. So what this means is you go in to all the computers, the servers, etc., and now you see how they are configured. You see what patches they have. You see if there's antivirus software. You see about the group policies. You see if they have good hardware requirements, etc. So after you've done all the other stuff, because remember, computers and systems are set up to support the business. So if you go in and you do the systems analysis first, you may see a lot of wacky stuff that you just don't understand. You say, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. And you may even do changes, just trying to be nice for them. You know, oh, this is a horrible security hole. Let me fix that while I'm here. Well, those security holes may actually have a reason. There might be a point to why they're there. So once you've talked with the business person, once you understand what the business is, once you understand the infrastructure, you talk with the employees, all of that, then you go in and now you can see why are the systems working like they're working. Again, you know, from the business standpoint, if you talk with a business owner and he has a very small IT budget, he may say, I only want to spend absolutely what I have to on my computer systems. So if you go and you see a computer system that's 6 or 7 years old and, you know, the accountant is using it and she keeps complaining because it's too slow, well, if the business person said he doesn't want to spend a dime more on computers than he has to, well, then it's tough luck, Mildred. You're using a slow computer. I mean, because that's what the business has decided. Whereas, you may sit down at the computer, the guy has said, the boss has said, I want my employees to have good equipment, and you sit down at the computer, you see that it's 5 or 6 years old, you see that it's slow, and then you can go back to them and say, hey, that system over there, that is slow, that's pretty much obsolete. While we're doing the whole process to get everything up and secure, that system should be replaced. So that's one of the important things, you know, when you're doing the systems analysis, is that you understand what the idea, what the business is doing. When you're doing the systems analysis, again, what you're going to be looking for is things like the security policies, the group policies, you know, things like firewall settings. Is the firewall active, etc.? Is there antivirus installed on the system? Is there anti-malware installed on the system? Is it configured and set up properly? This was a huge problem that I saw with many clients where they installed one of these enterprise antivirus suites years and years and years ago, but it was misconfigured. And I saw this quite a few times with the Symantec's enterprise suite, where there was a server. So with Symantec, you would have one main server that would download updates from the internet, and then all the client computers would go to that one server to get the updates. Well, I had seen where they had set that up like 5 or 6 years ago, or however long ago, but then that server had been replaced. So although these computers had antivirus on them, although they were doing full scans every night or whatever, they never got updated. Their updates were 3 or 4 years old. Honest truth. You know, that's something that can happen. So go in and see what these configurations are. Also, when you're doing the systems analysis, again, we are looking for risk management, possible loss for business. Look for pirated software. Is the software on these systems legal? Is it legit? This could be a legal problem for the company in the future. So, you know, if you're sitting down and you think that, you know, half the company is using pirated software, you know, write that down. That will go into your report. Sadly, again, this will be a business decision, but your job is to present everything to the boss or to the client. So these are the things that you're going to be thinking about, like I say, with the systems analysis. It's after everything else. And again, you just go in there, and it's you know, basically anything you would do for tuning up systems. You know, is there enough RAM in the system? Is the computer new enough? Is it an obsolete system? Have updates been done? Security policies, etc. So now you should have a very, very good idea of the business, what their threats and vulnerabilities are, what their infrastructure looks like, what their systems are like, etc. You should have a very good idea of what is going on. So now you're going to go back and you are going to come up with a risk management plan. In this plan, you will spell out what you think the current threats are. These are the threats. These are your vulnerabilities. So, you know, the threat is somebody accidentally kicking the jumble of cables and bringing your systems down. You know, the vulnerability is that your cables are a mess. And then what you would do about that. You know, I would like to rerun the cabling so that this doesn't cause a failure in the future. With all this, you know, you will talk about the business assets. You will talk about how this affects the bottom line. You know, if you just have a jumble of cables, you say this could cause the business to go down for a day. From how I understand your business operates, this could be a $1,000 loss, a $5,000 loss, etc. So basically, you're just going to write out the plan, and it's very simple for this risk management plan. Is that you're just going to say, this is the threat, this is the vulnerability, this is the solution, and then you plug a cost in at the end of it. So putting antivirus software on all the computers will cost you $1,000. Rerunning the cable will cost you, you know, this. When you write the plan, a lot of people believe in this whole proposal thing. You know, put in multiple proposals. They say you should put a high price proposal in, a mid price proposal, and a low price proposal. That way they'll go, the boss will go for the mid price proposal. What I'll tell you, what I did, is if you are good at your job, you should only put one proposal in, because you've already asked them what their IT budget is. You've already asked them what their risk tolerance is. You've already asked them all these questions. So if you're good at your job, you should be able to present them the risk management, the proposal, and that should just fit their criteria. You know, you have all of these problems. It will cost you $5,000 to fix, $20,000 to fix, $100,000 to fix. These are the threats, these are the vulnerabilities, this is the price to fix those threats or vulnerabilities. That is much better. If you put multiple options in front of these business owners, what you have to understand is they're used to wheeling and dealing. They're used to bickering and negotiating and all that. And in technology, things really don't work that way. I mean, things really work or they don't work. You can't negotiate a lot of this stuff. So if you give them multiple options, they will start to try to argue with you or debate with you or nickel and dime you. If you give them one option, it's much easier to defend that single option. When you do the plan, what I would suggest is that, what I used to do is you do the plan in steps. So you say, we found all of these issues. You need antivirus software, you need a server room, etc. So let's break it down into chunks. Every chunk that you do should improve the quality of the technology service that the client or your boss is getting. So you go, okay, none of the computers, you look at the systems and everything's horrible. There's not a proper firewall. The antivirus is out of date. They need a server room, do rewiring, etc. So what I would say is you say, okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to tune up and install antivirus software and such onto all of your computers. So all of your computers will have antivirus software. We'll clean them up and make sure all your computers are working fine. And that will cost you $3,000. Then after that is done, we are going to go through and we are going to rerun all your cabling. Your cabling is a mess. This is a disaster waiting to happen. This is downtime waiting to happen. So once all your computers are working A-OK, then we're going to go in and we are going to rerun your cable to make sure all the cabling's good. And that will be the next chunk, and that'll be another $3,000 or $4,000. And then you say, okay, now that we know all the cabling is good, now that we understand all this is happening, now we need to look at your network equipment. You're using this Linksys garbage. We need to get Cisco in here. We need to get real firewalls, protect your system. So now we're going to install the switches with the antivirus protection. We're going to install the router with the good firewall. So we're going to do that. That'll do the next protective service. And then, backup and redundancy. But basically, as you go with this process, whatever they have, is that you divide the proposal into chunks. Every single chunk should have a cost that the owner or the boss understands, and it should have a real benefit. So you finish cleaning up all the computers, everybody's happy because the computers are working better. The internet might still be slow, there might still be some problems, but you keep going on this process. Remember, focus on the business reasons for all of these things that you're going to do. If you focus on the business reasons, you'll be good. And then also, while you're working through this process, you get a better idea. The more you work with your business, with your boss and such, the better idea you get about how the business operates, how things could operate better. So if you do the process slowly, you may find things as you're doing the process that you did not realize in the beginning, and so you need to modify the plan. That, I don't know, just as you're going along, you find out that things could be doing better or more secure that you did not realize in the first place. So that's what you're going to do. After you look at everything, you're going to sit down, you're going to write out a plan. Again, you spell out the vulnerabilities, spell out the threats, spell out the assets that are in risk. Again, as few options as possible. You don't want to give them 50 options. It's just bad. And then chunk it, like I say. Get all the computers cleaned up first, and then the networking. This is the best way to move the risk management proposal forward. So we talked about the plan, and we talked a little bit about the process. But I want to talk a little bit more about this, the mitigation process. So the mitigation process, again, is it's basically just trying to secure the system. So, that there isn't downtime, there isn't system failure, there isn't hacking, there isn't theft, or if there is, that you minimize the damage to the systems. The big thing, while you are going through this mitigation process, is I want you to continually assess the situation, continually look at the situation, look at the business. One, businesses can change relatively quickly. So if you go in and you start this whole process with a business, in 2 or 3 months, the business environment may have changed for the business, and therefore what their threats and their vulnerabilities are may have changed. So you don't want to get to the end of making all the systems secure and perfect, and then find out the business is doing something else and all the work you did was pointless. Continuously assess you know what's going on. And then also, not only with the assess where the business is going, but also make sure that you are still choosing the best solutions. You know, some of this technology, the security technology that comes out, you know, this stuff comes out, you know, every couple of months. So you may write a proposal, as I've talked with you guys a lot, you know, you write a proposal, the boss or the owner he wants it now. He wants it, he will just sign the contract, and just as soon as he signs that contract, you'll start the work. And then for some reason, you know, he goes out of town, and so it doesn't get signed for a month. Well, then it doesn't get signed for 2 months, and then finally gets signed. Well, he didn't send you the deposit check, so then it takes another 3 weeks. So you could put in a proposal, and then he hasn't accepted the proposal for 3 months. In that 3-month period, things may have changed. So make sure you're looking at the landscape. Make sure, you know, you're still choosing the right antivirus solution. You're still choosing the right firewall solution or whatever. In that 3-month period, things may have changed, so you don't want to install, you know, obsolete systems. It's just a bad thing. And so that's the main thing when you're going through this mitigation process, you know, for the risk assessment and for all these computer systems, is that this is a continuing process. Like I say, you're gonna get all the antivirus up to date. Then you're going to do group policies. Then you're going to do rewiring. Then you're going to worry about the firewall. Then you're going to worry about this. Then you're going to worry about that. And by the time you're worried about this 5th thing or 10th thing, well, then the antivirus needs to be looked at again. And then the firewall needs to be looked at again. This is a continuing process. Again, like I say, I've seen it too much with the technology profession, is that, you know, people secure their networks and then they're done with it. they never worry about it again. This process, remember, it's a continuing, ongoing process. So this was the class on practical risk assessment and mitigation. You know, this was a very, very theory class. We didn't go into like actual hardware or actual software. You will have to figure out what the hardware and the software requirements are as you go. You know, this is, you know, October of 2010. If I told you an antivirus solution right now, when you get around to doing this risk assessment, there might be a better antivirus solution out there. You have to look at what the business environment is that you're dealing with, you know, what their assets are, what their threats are, what the vulnerabilities are, and what the solutions are at the current time. You know, this kind of stuff changes. The big thing that I'm going to tell you, again, most consultants, most IT people don't really think about, is the better relationship you have with the people for your clients, or, you know, the other employees around you, your peers, the easier this process and the better this process will go. If you're just one of these computer geeks that wants to just get locked into a server room all the time, it will be very difficult to do things like risk assessments, because risk assessments, I mean, this is something you have to talk to a lot of people. You have to pull information out of them. You know, you can't just ask them a question and then accept any answer they give you. Sometimes you have to reel in the answers that you're looking for. So, I mean, there is a lot of interviewing. There is a lot of talking to people. So, you know, the better you can talk to people, the better the relationship you have with people, the easier this is going to go. Like I say, you know, you start off with the interview of the CEO or the business person, because the big thing, again, with risk management, is, you know, risk is a business concept. It's a business concept. So if you don't understand the business, well, then you can't really do a risk assessment properly. So the first thing is starting with, like I say, the executive, the business owner, etc. Don't get pawned off on that little computer geek that, you know, fixes a power supply every once in a while. You need to talk to the people that understand what the business plans are. The next thing is, like I say, walk through the building, walk into the server room, take a look at the computers, just feel the systems. See what's going on. Is cabling run properly, or is it all willy-nilly? How is everything set up? You can determine what the risks are based on that. You know, can anybody in the world, you know, walk into the lobby and plug into a network connection, you know, sitting by the stack of magazines? I've seen this. Is the entire network vulnerable by one little Linksys wireless access point that has no security protection on it. So, you know, somebody throws in some little access point, and that gives access to the entire network for anybody walking by with a netbook computer. This is a real possibility. So go in and look. I mean, like I say, just look at how the equipment is taken care of. Is it dusty? Is it cruddy? Or does it look pretty nice? Is it new or is it old? These are things that you're going to have to think about when you're coming up with the plan, when you go back to the boss or the client. After you've observed the infrastructure, then you're going to talk to the employees. So you have an idea of what the business is supposed to do. You have an idea of the state of the technology. Then you go talk to the employees. Because again, bosses don't always understand the problems that the employees are having. You know, employees, they may have not gotten their email for the past 2 months, but hey, they don't care because they don't have to work if they don't get their email. I've seen stuff like that happen. Then, after you do that, the documentation analysis. Because if there is a problem, if there is a meltdown, who do you need to contact? How do you contact them? What are the resources that are available to get everything back up and running? And then finally, you do the systems analysis. You do the thing that you think about when you think about being a computer guy. You sit down at the servers, you sit down at the firewall, you sit down at the client computers, and take a look at how they're set up. You know, this will say, you know, is antivirus installed and is it set up properly? So this will tell you about the risks on these systems. Finally, when you're done, you know, you're going to come up with a plan. You're going to clearly spell out what the threats are, what the vulnerabilities are, what the approximate costs are, you know, to fix these vulnerabilities. And then, like I say, I would chunk your plan into blocks. So you secure all the client computers, then you secure the network, then you clean up. You know, however you decide to do it into blocks. Each single block should have a fairly specific price attached to the block, and when you are done with that block, things should be better. So again, they may not be perfect, but they should be better than they were. You go in, you tune up all the computers are now working faster, the internet's still not good. Well, you can deal with that in a second, but at least the computers are working better. That makes the boss feel like they're actually paying for something. Because like I said, you know, in the beginning, one of the problems with security, one of the problems with risk management and all this, is you don't see, a lot of times you don't see what you're buying. You buy a server, you get a big black box that buzzes. You may not really know what that big black box that buzzes does, but you get something physical. When you start doing a lot of the security work, that boss or that client is paying a lot of money, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for this work. But it's not something they can see. You know, they can't see a firewall configuration. So you want to give them something so that they understand that things are working better. So every chunk that you do, systems should work a little better. And then finally with that, like I say, that there needs to be a business reason for everything that you're going to be proposing. The whole plan, you know, with mitigation, as I talked about, is an overall cycle. So you go through, you clean up everything, you make everything more secure, and then you start over again, and you reanalyze the systems. Then you make it more secure, and then you reanalyze the systems. You reanalyze the system. Antivirus, hackers, threats, all of this stuff, it changes monthly. So if you go in and you protect all the systems, things may change. You know, they're anywhere from, like I say, hackers or viruses to, you know, the neighborhood goes downhill or something. You know, all of this can change periodically, so you need to make sure that you're still protected. Your systems are still as least vulnerable as possible. So that was a class on practical risk assessment and mitigation. There's a lot of stuff to think about. Like I say, I gave you everything in a step-by-step process. This is the process that I use, and there is a reason behind the process. You can change it, but again, there's a reason why I do these things, how they do. Interview the boss, look at the infrastructure, interview the employees, documentation, system analysis, etc. So as you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy over here for Everyman IT. I enjoy teaching this class, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one.